Good evening again. My name is Gabriela Romani. I direct the Alberto Italian Studies Institute. So tonight we have our first lecture of Rome as Seton Hall. And we're very pleased to have our speaker from Rome. He apparently has no problem staying up in the wee hours of the night, but that's what Romans do. They enjoy their nights and they enjoy their days, to tell the truth. You know, they enjoy life. They know how to enjoy life. And so it's a real pleasure to have Paolo with us. Paolo Gigliozzi is from Rome. He has a PhD from the University of Savoy in France, and from 1995 he's an independent tour guide, and he will speak to us about Raphael tonight. This is the 500th anniversary of Raphael's death, who died in 1520. So there was a really big exhibit in Rome at the Museum of the Scuderie del Quirinale. The Scuderie del Quirinale, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. It's a beautiful museum near the Quirinale. There used to be the stables. That's what they kept, the horses. And the Quirinale used to be the residency of the Pope until 1870, then became the residence of the King of Italy, starting with Victor Emmanuel II, and now is the residence of the President of the Republic. The Scuderia, very, very beautiful. This exhibit was supposed to be there to start during the pandemic. They postponed it, and it was in August, and apparently it was a real success, sold out every day. So I'm very curious to hear about it. I'm gonna pass the microphone to and mute mine to Paolo Gigliozzi. Please welcome, join me in welcoming. Thank you, Paolo, for having joined us. And questions at the end, please, we love questions. You can either write them in the chat, or you can give me a sign that you want to ask a question, and unmute your microphone at that point. Okay, so there will be a lecture for about 30 minutes, and then we open up to questions, comments, or whatever you would like to ask, as we usually do at our events. Paolo, microphone is all yours. And thanks again for talking to us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And also, in particular, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with many Americans, because, as you said, it is difficult to be with foreigners at this moment. So it's a complicated issue for us to be as we used to be before. I have been working as a tour guide for a long time, so have no contacts with foreigners for me was somehow artificial. And tonight, I'm very happy to have Italians and Americans and people from all over with me, and meeting everybody with Raphael. So that is the point. So we're going to start our free speech on Raphael, an eternal artist in the eternal city, in the Città Eterna. Raffaello Sanzio, you can read his name written in Italian, was born in Urbino, a beautiful town northeast of Rome. And his birth, his day of birth, 6th of April, 1483, and also his date of death, 6th of April, 1520. This was quite a coincidence, because to be born and die in the same day is not very common. Both days were Friday. As Italians say, venerdì. Today, here, 10 minutes ago. Venerdì, it's the day of Venus. And Venus will come many times as a coincidence, Raphael's life. Being born in Urbino, splendid place, as I said, northeast of Rome. This is a beautiful self-portrait of Raphael in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Being born in Urbino was very, very important, I would say crucial in Raphael's life, because Urbino was one of the most important, one of the most really highly cultivated centers in the Renaissance in Europe. The Dukes of Urbino, you can see in this photo on the right, the splendid image of the Palace of the Dukes, Palazzo Ducale, now a museum, a national gallery in Urbino. The Dukes created here one of the most sophisticated centers of the Renaissance, a place where poets, where artists, philosophers could meet right at the time of Raphael's birth. Maybe the fact that Raphael was also born in a family of artists somehow paved the way to his successful life. His father was also a painter, Giovanni Santi. And Giovanni Santi was a very, very clever father, a very, very good father for Raphael and for us also, because Giovanni Santi immediately understood that his son was a brilliant, super gifted young artist, young painter. So he sent him to work and to learn also, especially painting, in the workshop of Pietro Perugino, who was, together with Botticelli, #1 painter in central Italy, so Perugia, Florence, Urbino, and Rome at that time. Here we see a fresco of the handing over of the keys, and I'm very happy that Gabriele, just a few minutes ago, that the next lecture will be on Michelangelo, because this fresco is in the Sistine Chapel. It's the handing over of the keys, where we can see Christ giving the keys of the church to St. Peter. So that's the fresco, maybe the most famous fresco, painted before Michelangelo's frescoes in the ceiling and in the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel. If we make a comparison between this fresco by Perugino and also a panel painted by Perugino, the Marriage of Virgin Mary, and a second panel painted by Raphael, again, the Marriage of Virgin Mary, the one by Raphael is the one you can see on the right. Perugino is the one on the left. We can easily understand what's the method used by Raphael. Basically, the same kind of framework. People in the foreground, a large square.
I think maybe I'll just have to stick with that, because I think my vision was a little bit.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. A large square, and then a building, a temple, looking like a church in the background. And the method used by by Raphael is essentially the one of studying in a very, very special and detailed way the masters, study and study them again. Not really necessary to make revolutions in painting, but something can change thanks to details. And what are the details here? It's very, very easy to see. If you compare the two images, you can easily see that the steps in the panel by Raphael on the right are higher. The building is more adequate in its proportion compared to the group of people. The other one by Perugino on the left seems to be very heavy, maybe too heavy, too massive. But there's also, as I said, other details. The one by Raphael on the right is more circular than octagonal. And this gives a sense of rotation to the whole building. Whereas the one by Perugino is more geometrical, much more geometrical and static. There's a difference in the way people are painted. the one painted by Raphael on the right, they are basically on a curve, in a curve. The one painted by, the group of people painted by Perugino are almost all standing on the same line. So something different in the way perspective is used, totally different. But basically, the atmosphere of the painting is about the same. In Italy, in Rome, let's be proud of being Roman, Gabriella also by family name. In Rome and in Italy, 2 books were published about the same time, in 2005 and 2006. 2 biographies on Raphael. You can see the same self-portrait of Raphael in the Uffizi on the left. And another book, another biography on Michelangelo. They were both written by Antonio Forcellino. And the titles of these 2 books, then translated into many languages, were extremely, extremely meaningful, because the one on Michelangelo is called Una vita inquieta, a troubled life. Raphael is called Una vita felice, a happy life. And maybe there's no other place, such as the Vatican, where you can see the difference between the way of painting by Raphael and Michelangelo. And even in the self-portraits, they look completely different. Raphael is a quiet person, is a quiet young boy. Michelangelo, you can see his image painted in the skin of Saint Bartholomew in the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel. And here there's also a detail of Michelangelo's self-portrait. But there was also a very different way of thinking of men in general. For Raphael, man cannot be alone. Man cannot be alone in front of God. Man cannot be alone in life. For Michelangelo, man is basically always alone in front of God, and he worked alone in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. He worked alone on his beautiful statues. He worked alone, completely alone, in particular in the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel. Raphael died, as we said, at a very young age, at 37, exactly 500 years ago, 1520. And I don't know if you ever read something about this difficult number, difficult age for painters. 37. 37 was the same age as Van Gogh, for example, or Toulouse-Lautrec, Parmigianino, Watteau. They all died when they were 37. But also many poets, for example, Pushkin, Rimbaud, composer Bizet, they all died at 37. I'm happy because I'm not a poet, because I'm not a painter, because I'm not a musician, and also because I am beyond 37. So I made it. Raphael's grave is in the Pantheon. Here is a picture of the coffin, a marble coffin of Raphael. You can also read his name, Raffaelli Sanzi, from Urbino. But there were many, many rumors, many doubts at the time of his death about the location of his tomb. Because immediately after he died, there was a theory about a second burial place, very, very close to the Pantheon. A church, just a minute walk from the Pantheon, a splendid church. Remember this name when you come back to Rome, when you come to Rome, Santa Maria above Minerva. There's also a beautiful statue by Bernini right in front of the church. And according to some historians, the tomb, the grave of Raphael, could also be one of the tombs in Santa Maria above Minerva. And there were so many doubts about his tomb that in 1833, they decided to open the coffin, the one you see in the photo in the Pantheon, to see whose bones were inside. And from descriptions, we now know very well that those bones were Raphael's. We know that he was buried in the Pantheon because he wanted to be buried in the Pantheon. This was written in his testament. In the most maybe incredible building, in the best preserved building, monument, temple, ancient temple, visible in Rome. The dome that you see is still the original dome of the Pantheon. The floor that you see is still basically the original floor of the ancient temple built in the 2nd century AD. Pantheon is today a church. It became a church in the Middle Ages. But this was a temple dedicated to the gods. Pantheon means Greek origins, all the gods, pantheon. And in the place where Raphael's grave is, you don't see the coffin any longer, but you can see people standing in front of Raphael's grave. Raphael also commissioned a statue, the statue of Virgin Mary with Jesus. The statue was commissioned by Raphael to Lorenzetto, and a very, very nice curiosity or coincidence again. The statue of Virgin Mary, the one you see right next to his grave, is exactly in the place, in the niche, where the statue of Venus in ancient time was. So we have a second kind of coincidence, let's say. He was born on a Friday.
The painter Raphael.
Oh, I thought it was.
And the statue guarding his tomb, the statue of Virgin Mary, is in the same place where Venus once stood. As Gabriella was saying before, for this very special year of celebrations, 1520, 2020, a wonderful exhibit was organized in the Scuderie del Quirinale. And you can read in Italian, this was my ticket, in the lower part of the image. You can read that the exhibit inaugurated in March the 5th. But only 3 days later, March the 8th, Italy, unfortunately, is in quarantine. And so we start having a very, very melancholic feeling. Maybe like in ancient time, like in the 1800s, people thought that the tomb of Raphael was lost. One church, Santa Maria, maybe the Pantheon, maybe somewhere else. And we start having the feeling and the fear also that we might lose something of Raphael and miss somehow something of Raphael again. There's a very, very nice, but also tragic image, sad image of one of the rooms in the Scuderie del Quirinale. This one, it's coming in a moment, where the paintings of Raphael, the most important painting is in Bologna, in the National Gallery in Bologna, Saint Cecilia. Then a little further, you can see some of his drawings. All these paintings coming from all over, from London, the National Gallery, from Bologna, from the Louvre, from Brera, from Naples. These rooms can be left completely empty. But here there was a real miracle. I'm very, very happy and also touched by what happened as an art historian, as a guide, as a Roman, and as a simple man, because there was a spontaneous agreement. Museums really from all over, they decided to let the masterpieces on loan in the Scuderie del Quirinale for a longer period of time, much longer period of time. And instead of ending in June, 2nd of June, Republic's Day in Italy, a very, very important holiday, the exhibit was extended until the end of August. And the rooms in the Quirinale were open also at night time. I was lucky because I could go around 10 o'clock in the evening. My sister went at 2 at night. And this was the first time that something like this happened in Italy. Almost 24 hours opening to let as many Italians, as many foreigners come and see Raphael's masterpieces in this very, very special place and in this very special moment. And let me tell you, this was like a real rebirth of Raphael, the Renaissance of Raphael, the real Renaissance. Raphael was born a second time. This is an image of the Quirinale, a photo taken just a couple of days ago. You can read, it's not easy to read, but you can see the banner on the left, the red banner next to the flag of Italy, Scuderie del Quirinale. And this is actually a video. It's very easy to go from the Quirinale to another place, to Vatican. In a moment, you will see the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Here it comes. It's here. The Quirinale is the highest hill in Rome.
For assistance in key areas.
This is the Dome of St. Peter's Basilica. And there's absolutely no other place like the Vatican to see Raphael's masterpieces. The first important masterpiece by Raphael in the Vatican is the School of Athens. This is a detail of the School of Athens and also the ceiling in the library, in the private library of Pope Julius II. A little personal consideration. As a tour guide, I have heard many times people coming to the Vatican and asking me or asking also other guides about the possibility to have a private tour in the apartments of the Pope. And when they ask this, they mean a private tour in the apartments of Pope Francis. So the residence of the Pope. It's absolutely not possible. If you find on the internet travel agencies, tour organizers who want to sell you a tour in the apartment of the Pope, Pope Francis, it's absolutely something fake, okay? Don't give them any credit. But you have a very rare opportunity instead, and this is practically every day of the week, 6 days a week, except Sunday when the Vatican museums are closed. Come and see next time you come to Rome, or when you come to Rome for the first time, and see this place, the one you see in the photo, that is the library of the Pope, Pope Julius II, painted by Raphael, the School of Athens, and come and see also the private office of the Pope, the same Pope, Julius II, with a splendid image of the liberation of St. Peter that will come in a few minutes. In this fresco, we can see essentially an architecture. The one I'm showing you now is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So I don't want to give you an anticipation of Michelangelo, because it will come on the 22nd, but it's just to compare the sense of space, the sense of perspective between the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo, where you can see, for instance, the creation of Adam, the most famous, maybe the most famous image of the Vatican, and the most famous image painted by Michelangelo, or the creation of the sun, or the separation between light and darkness. And you see that behind God, or behind Adam, there's no perspective, okay? It's like an empty space. It's the space of divine. It's the space of the Spirit. It's the space of God. So this cannot be something measurable. It's not human, it's divine. If I go back for a moment to the School of Athens instead. In the School of Athens, you can easily understand that the space can really be somehow walked even by us today. You can see steps, you can see arches, you can see chiaroscuro in the arches. Remember the covered ceiling of the Pantheon? You see here the same image, the same covered ceiling in the School of Athens. If we take a zoom of the School of Athens, we can understand what is the fresco about. It's an impossible meeting, let's say, because here we see philosophers, for example, Plato and Aristotle. We can see Michelangelo quite lonely, totally isolated, writing something on a piece of paper. We can see Alexander the Great, this very elegant figure with a helmet. He's talking, maybe actually he's listening to Socrates in olive green, okay? And this is somehow something totally impossible because this meeting cannot exist in reality. We have people from different places, different time, Michelangelo, Plato, Aristotle, okay, that's same period, but then we also have Raphael. Raphael is the one on the right here, the black hat. Next to him, in yellow, is an astronomer. That's why he's holding the globe, Ptolemy. The one bending next, showing something with a slate, is Pythagoras. Okay? So this meeting is absolutely not possible because they lived in different places, in different periods. But this meeting is possible, becomes possible in the new Eden, in the new Athens, in Rome, in the beginning of the 1500s. Because Michelangelo, Raphael, Bramante, Leonardo da Vinci, they are all working in the same place at the same time. And this meeting is possible and also very easy for everybody because this wall, this splendid fresco by Raphael, is in the library, as I told you, of the Pope. And of course, in the library, there are books of philosophy, sciences, poetry, history. And so this meeting becomes absolutely normal in the mind, in the head, in the heart, in the soul of a learned person who wants to take as much as possible from all these different forms of knowledge and culture. That's why this fresco is so important. Again, what I would like to underline here is the difference in the framework. This building is at the same time a human space, classical, but also Renaissance. Very similar to the projects made by Donato Bramante, who was also born in Urbino, just like Raphael, who was a very, very good friend of Raphael. And architect Donato Bramante was the one in charge of rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica right at this time. So very likely this was a form of collaboration because Raphael had the general idea of the School of Athens, but according to many historians, the building was maybe painted by Donato Bramante himself, or at least suggested by Bramante to Raphael, taking one of his projects of St. Peter's Basilica, or maybe being inspired by the ceiling of the Pantheon, the covered ceiling of the Pantheon, the Basilica of Maxentius in the Roman Forum, or also the baths of Caracalla, okay? Rome was a splendid place at that time. Here are maybe the two most famous statues in the Vatican museums. Apollo del Belvedere on your left, 2nd century AD, and the group of Laocoon, 1st century AD, discovered in Rome, downtown Rome, right at the beginning of the 1500s. Imagine the emotion of Raphael, the emotion of Michelangelo, Bramante, Pietro Perugino, when these beautiful masterpieces that everybody thought were lost forever were unearthed in Rome in the beginning of the century, in the beginning of the 1500s. Little consideration for the moment. I went to the Vatican museums last week, Friday, and at the moment, the statue of Apollo del Belvedere is under restoration. So when you come back, as soon as possible, we hope, you'll see the statue of Apollo after the restoration. There is one fresco by Raphael where somehow the world of divine and the world of human meet. And that's the Liberation of St. Peter. This fresco is also in the apartments of the Pope, but not in the same room as the School of Athens. This is in the Stanza della Segnatura, in the room of the signature, which was the office, the private office of the Pope. The place where Pope Julius II, 500 years ago, met ambassadors, diplomats, cardinals, in a private audience. And in this fresco, we can see at the same time something human, the space and the building, the jail, the prison, where St. Peter is something massive, as you see. One pillar, a thick pillar on the left, and another very, very massive pillar on the right, an arch, an iron gate, a limit. So somehow this place is not as accessible as the School of Athens. We could easily go and talk, just go up on the steps and meet Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, and talked to them. It was totally open, deep. This is not deep. This is much more limited. But the limit is between us, people looking at the fresco, and the gate. Behind the gate, and in particular behind the angel, there's no limit. There's no, like a never-ending perspective behind the angel, because the angel is the symbol of the grace of God. The angel was sent by God to set St. Peter free from jail. That's what we see on the right. And here we can see very well the detail of this beautiful moment when St. Peter, having a very, very doubtful face, where are we going? Is it possible to go out? So doubts on the face of a man, the first apostle, but a very, very different expression on the face of the angel. He's assertive, okay? And the splendid union between divine and human is in the beautiful moment of the hands holding each other. The hand of the angel is holding the hand of St. Peter, and together they walk out of the prison. The fresco is divided in 3 parts. So we can see somehow, like in a movie, just like photograms of a movie, act number 1 or scene number 1, act 2, they go out of the prison, they leave the prison, and notice that soldiers are sleeping in the center and also here on the right, down on the steps. It's not just a simple popular note. It's night time, and so it makes sense that the soldiers are sleeping. But the fact that they are sleeping is much, much more meaningful. It means that the moment of the revelation does not come for everybody at the same time. Okay? It comes. It will come also for others, but not at the same time. The moment of the revelation is something that goes step by step. And here Raphael was maybe the first one in painting to show this progression in the revelation of God. Something that was later done by also painted by Caravaggio, but many years after Raphael. And here on the left, we can see the moment of the consequences in common people's life of the miracle. The soldiers wake up, they look for St. Peter, but it's too late because St. Peter now is far away. And you can see that it's no longer really night time. You can see sunrise with this splendid sky in the background. This is the first time that night was painted on a very large fresco. A story happening at night was also painted, for example, by Piero della Francesca around 70 years before Raphael. In particular, the Dream of Constantine in Arezzo. But here, what is different is the size of the fresco. This is about 5 times as large as the one by della Francesca, and in particular, the dynamism. People acting, people in motion, people being surprised, okay? Here is again the beautiful difference between light and darkness, divine light, light coming from the grace of God, the one of the angel, and the darkness of men who don't know always where to go, what to do, St. Peter. This is just me in front of the Farnesina, because now we leave the Vatican and we go to another splendid place, Villa Farnesina, the building behind me. I could not take photos inside or make videos inside because until yesterday, there was no way to go in the Farnesina because of the restrictions for the pandemic. It reopened practically just yesterday. It's a wonderful Renaissance villa built by Baldassare Peruzzi for Agostino Chigi. And in the villa, Raphael and his students painted wonderful images. The most famous and the most classical image is the one of Galatea. And here she is. This beautiful nymph is driving a chariot, similar to the image by Botticelli, The Birth of Venus. She is not absolutely, she has no effort. She's very easy. She's completely confident. So confident that she's not even looking at the dolphins. She has a beautiful eye contact with one of the cupids. And we can see her mantle painted in maybe the most classical Pompeian red ever painted in the Renaissance, and also her hair blown by the wind. And here space is completely different. This is not as perspective as the other ones. It's flat. The sea, the sky, they are completely still because it's a classic image, because it's the example of beauty, it's the incarnation of beauty, and it's also the incarnation of love. In the Farnesina, in the villa in Trastevere, Raphael met several times the woman he was in love with, Margherita Luti. So the Farnesina is not only a splendid Renaissance villa, it's also somehow a temple of love, a real temple of love, because the place was the place where Agostino Chigi and his wife, Francesca Ordeaschi, lived, but also the place where Raphael and Margherita Luti could meet, just like 2 kids, and play the game of love in peace, and the place where very often Raphael went when he wanted to escape gossip and protocol, and somehow critics also coming from his work in the Vatican. Margherita Luti, la Farnesina, was a beautiful young girl, and Raphael painted a portrait of the Farnesina, Fornarina, that is in the Barberini collection in Rome. And we know that this portrait painted by him was the one he never sold to anybody. It's a very young woman, a woman who is at the same time extremely human, but also idealized. Human in the sense that she is the incarnation of a mother. You can see the detail of her hand. I will be pregnant. I could be pregnant. I will be Raphael's wife. So there will be children from our union. I am also ready to feed, to suckle our children, okay? But she's also extremely idealized. The branches you see in the background are branches of myrtle. And here there was a new acquisition in art history. About 10 years ago, they made X-rays for this painting. And from the X-rays, now we know very well that in the beginning, Raphael only painted one branch of myrtle in the background, because in the background there was a landscape and also a river. Then later he totally changed the perspective, and he painted many, many more branches of myrtle behind Venus. So that today we don't see any landscape, any river, and no perspective. Myrtle is the plant associated to Venus. And here we find Venus for the third time. He was born on a Friday, Venus Day, Venerdì. He is buried in the Pantheon, next to the place where the statue of Venus was. And the woman he was in love with is depicted as an incarnation of Venus. Myrtle is also very, very important in the idea of marriage. Pliny the Elder, for example, called myrtle myrtus coniugalis. So myrtle of marriage. Not only, but thanks to the X-rays, now we know that behind myrtle, there's also quince painted by Raphael. And also quince is a plant associated to Venus and to pregnancy. Okay? Unfortunately, the love story between the Fornarina, Margherita Luti, and Raphael ended in a very sad way, in a very tragic way. When Raphael was about to pass away, when he was sick for maybe 8 days, according to others, 15 days, but very likely it was just about a week. Margherita Luti, she tried to go to Raphael's deathbed, but she was not recognized as a relative of Raphael, so she was rejected. She was so sad and so frustrated that after Raphael's death, she entered a convent. Just a few weeks after Raphael's death, she entered a convent in Trastevere, Santa Polonia, and she died. She spent the rest of her life in the convent, and she died as a nun. When Raphael died, according to Giorgio Vasari, but also according to many other chronicles written by ambassadors and other people, we know that next to his bed, the canvas of the Transfiguration was displayed. This is the last painting made by Raphael. It's in the Vatican, in the painting gallery of the Vatican, beautifully refurbished a couple of years ago. And in this canvas, we can see the moment of the maybe most important miracle, the most important event of Jesus' public life. We see the moment when Jesus is like lifted up to the blue sky in a beautiful light, and people in the lower part do not understand, do not recognize what's going on. There's only one person who understands what's going on. There's only one person, one young boy, the epileptic boy, this one, who has eye contact with Jesus. Again, that's the moment when Raphael seems to say, revelation and grace, they don't come for everybody at the same time. It comes for the boy who needed something, who needed the grace of God and the miracle of Jesus at this point, but it doesn't come to his mother here, this woman, or to other people. It's very, very, at the same time sad, but also poetic that this canvas was displayed just next to the bed of Raphael. Imagine the scene, like in theater. Raphael is passing away. He's only 37, extremely loved by everybody, loved, of course, by Margherita Luti, the Fornarina, by popes, by cardinals. And in this canvas, we can see the transit of Jesus, but at the same time, also people could see in real life the transit of Raphael. Like if Raphael's life was reminding people of Jesus' life. There was another strange coincidence. When Raphael died, Good Friday, just like Jesus, when Raphael died, April the 6th, 1520, cracks were visible in some palaces in the Vatican. And this made many, many people think of the cracks in the Temple of Solomon that made some parts of the temple collapse when Jesus died. Very likely there was an earthquake in Rome that day, but it's another coincidence. We like to think anyhow that this is the moment, Raphael's death, and this is the canvas, the Transfiguration, where these two lives match together, touch each other. Raphael's life and Jesus' life. Raphael is dying, and just like, almost like Jesus, he's going up to the sky. His soul is going up to the sky. So this canvas is not only the transfiguration of Jesus, but can really be taken as the transit of Raphael, the transfiguration of Raphael. He's no longer with us. He's dead. Like a Roman ancient emperor, he's becoming a Devo, a divine. And being Devo, divine, he's eternal in the city of eternal time. Grazie. Thank you very much for having spent your time with me, and in particular for having spent with me and with Gabriella some time talking about and looking at the splendid canvases and paintings by Raphael. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo, on behalf of everyone. This was a wonderful, wonderful, insightful, very informative. There are a lot of things that I didn't know about Raphael, so I'm gonna now open the floor to questions and comments if there are any. But while people take maybe a little time to think about their question, I just want to ask you if you can tell us more about the reputation of Raphael as a happy person. You mentioned the book, you know, Raphael, the happy one, Michelangelo, the troubled one. So can you tell us a little bit more about the the reputation of Raphael as a happy painter, a happy person. So happy person or someone who painted happy moments?
I would say both. In his case, the fact of living in a happy way, his own life, and the fact of depicting life, also other people's life, as a happy way was just the same, in perfect parallel view. For Raphael, maybe more than for anybody else in the Renaissance, man could really be in the center of the universe, like in the splendid image by Leonardo da Vinci, but also by Vitruvius. Man was in the very, very center of the universe, and man could take as much as possible from everything and from everybody. That's why maybe a moment spent in the library of the Pope is so important, because on the walls you can see the different versions of happiness. Happiness in philosophy, happiness in law, happiness in religion, in faith. You can easily get to the center of this room and absorb as much as you can from everything. So the reputation of Raphael, even when he was a young artist, was extremely high. We know from Vasari that Raphael was the first one in his biography to be called Divino. It took longer time for Michelangelo to be called Divino.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody has some comments or question? You know, somehow, because we're doing the share screen, I cannot see everyone. But if there is if there are any questions that you have that you like, please come forward. This is time. And if not, well, you know, we are at 7 o'clock now, so we are just about at the end of the hour that we have for this event. I see messages saying, "Oh, please record it." I could hear this over and over again. So yes, there will be a recording. If you're interested, write to Barbara, and she will send you the link starting next week. For now, thank you again to Paolo. This was really wonderful. What a treat for us who are stuck here and cannot go to Rome. This was really wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a good night, and thanks everyone for joining us, and see you on the 22nd. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.